Hey, this time it is the Temple of Athreos, inspired by the latest D&D book, the Mythic Odysseys of Theros. Hey, welcome back to Swords and Sandals. This time I am going to be working on the Temple of Athreos, who happens to be one of the active gods in the latest edition of D&D from the Mythic Odysseys of Theros. A lot of the gods have constellations, and I really like this, and I thought it was necessary to include that in the design work. Athreos is not a god that is commonly worshipped. So there are a couple different things I needed to do. It needed to kind of be secluded, so it couldn't be too fancy, and and ultimately, I wanted to make sure that there's nothing ruined, because in this world the gods are very active, and so all of the stuff is going to be brand new, right? So it had to be clean. It had to be maybe a little rain stained or whatever the case would be, but it had to, there couldn't be rubble laying around it. It was something that was kept up. It was something as a place of worship. So I've been getting back into D&D more and more these days. Um, I've always loved it since I was a kid in the '80s, but now, because I've really been focusing on story and character creation, this has become really important to me, and I think it's a really good outlet for that. So as I'm working on these models, I'm constantly trying to think of, story to go along with it. So the reason that I made this temple is because I am going to make my very first D&D campaign, and so I'm going to probably finish this in July. I'm really hoping to finish it in July, and I will be posting it on D&D Beyond most likely. And it's going to be free. I'm going to put it for free because it's my very first one, so I know it's not going to be perfect. So I'm going to hope and pray for the community to download it and give me feedback on that, so that way the rest of them could be much better. All right, enough of that now. So like I start everything off, it's always just sort of a basic idea template. I draw it on this foam. I think I got this foam from a hobby store because they usually don't sell green around my area. It's about 1 inch thick, something like that. But here I am just cutting the basic stuff out with a regular knife. Scoring the lines. It's a 1 inch by 1 inch grid because it's going to be a D&D game board. So this is just a basic score, and then eventually I'll come back with the pencil and make it thicker. So I did this stairs offline here, off camera. It's just two pieces of foam put together. I just kind of carved some steps into it pretty haphazardly. I just drew a big circle, cut it in half, and used them, stacked them on top of each other. So this is me realizing that I wanted to make the platform a little bit bigger. So I know all this rock is going to be in the background, so I have to stack up this. I have to stack up this all the foam to create that rock wall. So there is the rock wall right there. I thought I was going to do something with the back there, but inevitably I just decided to ignore it and paint it all gray. I think this is the first time I've ever really done a rock wall, so I just kind of played around with it. This took quite a while, actually. I'd say maybe about an hour of just sort of teasing the whole edge of the foam there to make it work. I had no kind of idea where I was really going with it. I just kind of knew I had the basic idea of rock formation. So there is the final carved look that I came up with. This is a watered down Modge Podge. I just wanted to seal up some of the edges and to kind of fill in the cracks a little bit. But I think I did a 1-to-1 water Modge Podge kind of thing here. Again, I'm not trying to put any color on this because I just don't want to mix any of that stuff up right now. I just wanted to keep it kind of pure because I used this a couple different times actually through this project, and I wanted it to dry pretty clear. So okay, now that that was all dried up, this is that Sculptamold, So I was using a lot of it to kind of fill in some of the gaps. Now I had to watch because Sculptamold will not do the basic look. It's gonna. I don't know what's the best way of saying this. It's kind of like Play-Doh a little bit, right? So it's not gonna have that jagged edges. So I wanted to make sure that it was only in the where the rocks would be falling down and things along those lines. But and I always use gloves with Sculptamold these days because the wash up is just, trying to get your hands clean with this stuff all dried on it is a pain in the butt. So I always use latex gloves these days when it comes to Sculptamold. All right, I am doing this average, the basic. Use the aluminum foil to create some texture. I never seem to have the best luck with this though. Everybody else makes this stuff, and it looks great, but I don't know. Mine looks like it barely even makes a dent in the foam. I don't know what that's all about. Okay, so here it is again, but this is Modge Podge with it's a full non-diluted version, and I did this because that Sculptamold really needs to be sealed up, and it's really porous, so it soaks up that stuff. So once it's all dry, this is a basic, I think they call it pewter gray from Apple Barrel. So that's it's kind of my primary paint actually for this model, and a lot of models actually. It's kind of my base coat. So because Sculptamold, this stuff doesn't cover very well. So there it is. Finally, it's all colored in one basic color there. I think I'm using granite gray. So it's gray, but it's sort of has a little bit of a cool tint to it. So there's a little blue in it. But I'm just using that as the first highlight color. Then I come back with a different color gray. I forget what it is. It's a lighter gray to kind of do it again. Now I'm going back with this is it's kind of a light black wash, but it is a black wash nonetheless. I think it's from Army Paint, and I really do like this wash. It's pretty good actually, but I'm gonna have to go through all of this and kind of fill in those cracks there, and then get it a little bit better. This was not actually my first idea to do, but inevitably, I just think it ended up looking a little bit better, and I didn't want to spend a whole lot of time trying to go back and do a lot of dry brushing on it. So the only thing I don't like about doing a wash on rocks is that it's always kind of glossy, so it always looks wet. And the only way you can get around that at least I'm aware of, is actually just spraying some sort of a matte finish on it. And I don't want to keep spraying everything down like that. So this is soft tone, I think that's what they call it, but it's basically brown. I'm doing this because of the idea of dirt being tracked in over the years, and so I'm very, very sparing with it. I just kind of want an idea of where the dirt tracks would be, and inevitably I just kind of whisk this in, but from this angle right now, it looks a lot thicker than it really ends up being, because when it dries, it kind of blends in a little bit better. And if it doesn't blend in, you can, before it completely dries, just wet down the brush, because my brush is wet, actually. So this way it's thinning it out as I'm playing around with it. And then, so you'll see where I kind of go back over that. But, all right, so these are the Hobby Lobby pillars, cake pillars, over in the wedding cake aisle. They're not very good molds, but they're good enough. So, but I have to trim them all down because there's burrs all over the place. If being for a food, you'd think it'd be a little cleaner, because the plastic comes off pretty easily. Actually, I could have done that with my fingers. Thinking about that on I don't know, wedding cake. It's just nonsense. But anyway, I had to go through every one of these because there's a seam line through the whole side. So I really don't have anything else to say about that right now. This video clip is really long. But I'm gonna paint this with this granite gray. So I know this is a lighter gray, and I want to make sure it stands out. And I want the columns to stand out. I don't want them to kind of blend in. I think the fluted edges of the columns are maybe a little too fancy for what I was going for this model. But finding pre-made columns is very, very hard. I'm really shocked because there's, Egyptian, Roman, Greek, all this type of architecture for models, and very few. So I'm actually gonna start making my own here pretty soon, but these are gonna work for the time being. So I don't know what I just kept pointing back and forth. Who knows? Now you're gonna see over here on the right some of those columns. They look like they're bleeding through. I had to paint this twice, and there's just a light above the table, and it makes them a little bit transparent. But once they get covered, you're not gonna see that. So this pencil, I'm just drawing the lines to kind of indicate the idea of these pieces of stone stacked on top of each other to create the pillars. I just sort of eyeball it. Just to kind of get an idea as to where the stuff is. But I had thought about just taking a knife and making a score around the whole thing, but I don't know. I just thought that I don't think I needed to get that detailed on this one. Not right now anyway. So I just used a pencil. It was a little bit easier. So there they are, all drawn in. And I'm going to use that. It's not called soft tone. It's called something else. But it's just the black wash that Army Paints has. So, as to say, I use it very, very sparingly. And because this wash is actually going to be on flat paint, I had to make sure that the brush was actually pretty wet. Otherwise, it just kind of soaks up, and it looks like you're painting it with a really watered down black paint. It does not work very well at all. So you're going to have to wet down that brush and make sure that you're basically almost soaking down your model as you're painting it. But as say, the look I'm going for here is just sort of rain, sort of the dirty rock washing onto the column kind of look. I don't know if this is exactly what it was. I should probably come in with a little bit of green, like a green wash, and done a little algae, because if this has been around for a while, it had algae, but I'm not really good in the landscaping just yet, so that's something I'm actually working on. I'm looking forward to getting into like the grass and weeds and vines and all that type of such stuff. But unfortunately, right now, I'm gonna stick with just the model material. So yeah, as I say, I have to go through every single one of these. It takes a while, but there we are. Let's say, it wasn't too bad. I made some of the ones that are going to be at the top, like around the rock structure, those little bitty small ones. I made those a little deep, darker, because I figured those would get dirtier. So I'm just like, because these columns are hollow, they're really, really lightweight, and they tip over pretty easily. So I'm just sort of jamming in this piece of foam into all of them. First off, just on the bottoms. This way, when I hot glue around it, there's a little more surface contact to stay glued down. So there I am. I say I'm gluing in the four sides down there to make sure that the foam doesn't go anywhere. And then I glue around the edges, and I'm going to secure it, working from the top to the bottom. And I'm about to put it in the wrong space and realized I want to make them all face a certain way. And then because of that, because I hate working with hot glue, There's a little pause here because I burned the hell out of myself again. I don't know what it is. I just can't seem to actually work with hot glue without burning all my fingertips off. I don't know what. I'm not really accident prone. I'm just not any good with handling safety when it comes to hot glue. Now, to be fair, I don't actually use the cold, like the hot cold version. I don't have the gun is only hot. I never have a problem with it melting foam, but maybe that's why I always burn myself, because the glue's too hot. I don't know. Maybe one day I'll read the instructions. Alright, so there we are. All of them are glued down. This is the 1-inch pink foam, and I'm just gonna eyeball it. So this is gonna be the stonework that's gonna be on top. I was trying to figure out if I wanted to have it stack on top of each other a little bit, kind of like a brick formation, but I figured, it's fantasy. Gods are real. They could have figured out how to put a big ass rock on top of them. I figured that's like the least of their concerns. This is the only time that you really see the stairs that I made there into the main and cut them into the main thing. I did not focus on that at all for this video because, all I did was just literally carve out stairs, and I don't think I did a very good job, really. Luckily, the wash actually covered up a lot of my errors there, but and I found that cutting this up to make this foam to make it kind of look like real rock, I had to. You want to cut off a really thin layer of the top edge, and it really gives it that look of being rock. I left the bottom perfectly flat though, because I didn't want it to have a problem with surface contact with the glue. But I'm doing the same colors, pewter gray and granite gray. And for this, it's just another essay. It's just a dry brush highlight. I don't know why I spend so much time on this, because this is kind of like, I don't know, this is kind of like painting 101. Everybody goes through this base coat and then dry brush. But I try not to use that many colors unless it's absolutely necessary. So let's say just sort of a really quick. Now this is a really, really dry brush. It doesn't look like it, but it's a dry brush. Now I did the streaks on purpose, right? Because again, I'm trying to think about like rain hitting this, and I don't know, maybe it's a little too much, but that's okay. Exaggeration's fine. I also put that those pink pieces of foam in the top, and I did that because, not because of being heavy, because I wanted that extra surface area to make sure that it would glue down. And again, I hate working with hot glue. It's string after string after string. So to complete the sort of design for the constellation, I went ahead and made a thinner rock, like out of the, I think it's 1/2 inch foam, and it's a little boomerang maybe shape. I don't know. Did the same thing, See, look at all that smoke, steam, whatever that was. So as I say, that was completing it. I kind of wanted to do like some statues or something, but I don't really have the minis for that. And none of the minis that are meant for gaming really look great as statues. There should be a whole line of just, figures for statues. So this is the little altar that I made. It's just a little piece of foam that I just started to carve up a little bit. I figured it just took a piece of rock from the area where they were, and then just kind of smoothed out the top and carved out at it, so they can have a platform there. I figure, if this is Greek, this is probably where they sacrifice a goat or something on. There's the downside here with the color scheme. It's just all gray and dark gray and partially black. I really wish there was a little bit more color in this. So you can see the dice tower I had in the background there. It's just gray and white. So anyway, this is what I eventually call my failed attempt at a brazier. I had this idea that it's like, all right, well, just cut a circle out of some thin cardboard, and then I will cut it off a little bit and make a little, make it cave in a little bit, and it'll look awesome. Yeah, I was wrong. The principles behind actually making that work, cutting that circle, cutting it, that little strip there, and then let's see. Here we go. Yeah. So you just sort of fold the edges in together a little bit, and like so. There we go. And that pushes everything in and makes it kind of like a bowl. The one thing that I had a problem with, though, was because I was using, like a cereal box or something like that. It has that wax on the other side, and it does not want to come off. So I ended up having to leave the tape on, which was not something I wanted to do. But I just used regular glue, like Modge Podge. No, not Modge Podge. Tacky glue. I used tacky glue, but unfortunately, it was not strong enough, and so I had to leave the tape on. So I think you probably have to use hot glue, or you'd have to use super glue, because there's just too much tension on the cardboard, and it's gonna pop right off. But as I say, this is actually, I think the idea behind this stuff actually works. It's just unfortunately my execution, blah, 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 execution. There we go. Execution was poor. It just didn't work. It just didn't look good. And I think inevitably, I'm not really quite sure what else I could have done, I guess. I mean, I think, maybe the bowls there are fine, but, but you have to have a much better, more realistic looking stand for it, I think, maybe. Otherwise, it's just not gonna be sold as a real brazier. It's just gonna be like am I saying that right? Brazier? Brazier? I don't know. Fire pit stand thing. This is me going, oh, you know what? I'll just carve a base out of foam. That'll be a great idea. That'll be easy. Yeah. And then every time I forget that, my fingers are gigantic, and then they just always get in the way. So see, I had carved a couple there, and I carved one out of rock, or made it, trying to make it look like a rock. Using for that paint. That paint is just like a metallic gray, gunmetal gray paint. I used it as a base, so I painted the base of these two front ones, and then I also did the front and back of the little bowls, because I thought it would look good. I was wrong. I mean, I guess they kind of they look like more like upside down mushrooms, right? I mean, than they do braziers. I don't know. I don't think I've actually seen a brazier in a long time. I should have looked for references, but I didn't. So yeah, look, it looks like a mushroom. Oh well. This is iridescent copper paint from Golden. This is, as far as I'm concerned, Golden has the best metallic paint, the iridescent paint out there. This stuff is amazing. I painted a copper dragon with this stuff, and it was just, I loved it. It's nice. It's thick. I'm putting it on really thin because I want that gunmetal to kind of be exposed. Okay, so I think I'm going to wrap up the model right here. I would also like to go back and revisit this a little bit and kind of add some more details. Some actual torches along the way. Something that actually is propped up and anchored to the stone. That would, I think, kind of make it feel a little bit more lived in. So right now, I think I'm pretty happy with the way most of it turned out. Except for those braziers. those braziers, I really wanted just to pull them off of the model. So that is a wrap on the Temple of Athreos. Hope you liked it, and I'll see you next time. Keep building.